Hello and welcome to the Charles River Conservancy Parkland Show. My name is Renata von Charner. I'm the founder and president of the Charles River Conservancy, and we have with us Senator Will Brownsberger.
Well said, well said.
Well, I have been struggling, but I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
I made it before the snowstorm. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, this is a special pleasure to have the senator here today because his district is on the Charles River. And we're going to see a map of the Charles River like we always do. And your district is on the river. We'll see a picture of your district. And but there are also parts of the river that are in other districts, but you have some very important projects happening in the river. So we will be talking about those.
Great.
Now, you did not arrive in shorts today, but you normally, I saw you last night in your yellow storm suit.
Yes.
And that's normally how you move around.
It's definitely my preferred mode. It was terrible today. My wife wanted to ride into work, so I drove, and it was the worst possible day to drive. It was a nightmare. But,
yeah. Well, I waited an hour later to make sure the ice was gone, so I could go by bike.
Gosh. Yeah. Well, anyway.
And I remember
that is definitely my preference, is to be on the bike, and that's what I do most of the time.
Yeah, and I remember when you got into the Senate, you then took a bike ride across the country.
Well, actually, it was before I got into the Senate, but yeah, just before actually. I took a ride rolled out of my home in Belmont and rode into Anacortes, Washington 28 days later.
Yeah, and before you were a senator, you were a state representative.
Yes.
And so your district has grown, but I'm glad that Charles is still on it.
Very much.
Now this is a bicycle picture. Tell us about this group and.
Well, you know, in 2013 I ran for Congress, and so that was a group of folks that were helping me run for Congress. And we didn't have anything to do on Labor Day weekend. It was like, what do you do on Labor Day weekend? And one of the things we decided to do was kind of do an event of riding through every town hall, every town center in the congressional district, which we did do. It was about 120 miles, something like that. From,
serious stuff.
Oh yeah, from Cambridge out through Revere and so forth, and then out the other direction towards, I guess, Holliston. I mean, we were way out there.
Great.
So it was a great loop. Now, not everybody made it the whole time. We kind of did it in a little figure 8 thing, so some people could do a shorter route, and then there was about 4 of us who finished the day.
And
so it was an event. It was an event.
Yeah,
and obviously we had a lot of fun.
Good. And here is your district, and here is the Charles River.
Yep.
So it starts much northern. So the parts that are on the Charles, describe to us what the parts that are on the Charles that first come to your mind, that the most active parts.
Well, I represent some of the most prized properties in the DCR park system. From the whole Esplanade on the Boston side is in my district. There's a little stretch in Alston, which is not my district, and then both sides of the river between Watertown and Brighton are in my district. So I got a lot of the Charles. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to protect the Charles. I also have the Muddy River, a good chunk of the Muddy River there, going out through the Fenway. So I want to serve those special park assets for my constituents and also for the broader public.
Yeah, and the Muddy River does flow into the Charles.
Yes.
So and it's getting cleaner. That means the Charles is getting cleaner. So
I hope so.
Yeah. So I thought we might first talk about a bicycle project that you have been very supportive of, and situations that you encounter on a daily basis. And you might remember that map. We started that effort 9 years ago to create a continuous 8-mile stretch along the river. And we are now working on the Western Avenue Bridge. Here's a close-up. We are working on the Anderson Bridge. So here we see the Anderson Bridge, newly restored. That's what's proposed. And of course, we all know that there is already an underpass bridge at the Elliott Bridge. So that was one of the early renderings, and this is now happening.
Hold on a second. What's happening, Renata?
Well, thank you for asking. Thank you for interrupting. What is happening is Mass DOT has now allocated a design team. After 9 years of advocacy, and you were one of the advocates, you were one of the over 50 elected officials who supported it.
Yeah.
And now Mass DOT is designing it, and we just heard from the Mass Historical Commission that they are not objecting to have that go through. So now we need to move forward to the next step, which will be funding for it. So it's already in the capital improvement plan, so that's what the next step is.
What's in the capital improvement plan?
And the three bridges should have underpasses. So that we need to make sure it gets rolled over into the new plan.
Yeah, there's different levels of capital improvement plan though. I mean, I don't think it's in the funded capital improvement plan.
No, we want it to be in the funded. It's in the proposed. So that's what we are now pushing.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge we face here. I mean, I think MassDOT is actually, what I perceive MassDOT to be focused on is at-grade improvements, and they're making a lot of effort to provide at-grade improvements at River Street, and there's a couple $1 million getting spent there, and they're making or basically have made the at-grade improvements at Anderson. Could get a little better at Western. So River Street being the worst of the three bridges by far. I mean, it's just one of the most dangerous possible intersections that we have out there. So. I think we need to be honest and realistic about where we are with that, which is that they're making the investment in the at-grade improvements, and the ramp level improvements, particularly at River Street, are going to be a heavy lift, and so they'll have to compete for funding with many other things that you and I both care about. And
absolutely.
So we'll have to see how that turns out.
Yeah. Well, what we have seen is we feel we have a lot of support from Mass DOT. From Highway Commissioner Tinlin and the team and Secretary Pollock, and DCR is fully behind. So that it's been a big shift. We've been working on that for 9 years, as you remember.
Yeah.
So this is great progress. So we go back to your district map, and then just last night you and I both spent our evening on this project. Do you want to kind of summarize what happened and what your involvement has been with that project?
Well, I'm not sure how many of your viewers are familiar with this, but it's a very, very significant economic development project. You're flipping across a set of slides that show existing conditions or previous conditions at what are known as beacon yards, and that is the space. Maybe you could flip back a couple slices there. I mean, for people to kind of get oriented, that there's that bend at the Alston-Brighton tolls. There's a big bend in the turnpike, and at the bottom of that triangle in your slide, that triangle kind of cuts off a line, and in the curved space above the bottom of that triangle there is what has been a railroad yard for many, many years, which is no longer in use, and which has been acquired by Harvard. And there's a proposal to reroute the turnpike and have it run basically along the bottom of that triangle, kind of backing right up to BU.
And I have an image of that.
Okay,
here.
that's great.
Yeah.
So that would open up a whole new neighborhood between the Mass Pike and the river, which has basically been unavailable. And most people, I hope your viewers are able to get a sense of it by looking at this picture, but there's, I'm going to forget the right number, maybe 90, 100 acres of land. 100 acres of land that are going to get created for a new neighborhood. And what exactly is going to be in that neighborhood, nobody exactly knows yet. But there's a huge concern as we reroute the pike, to do things that are going to be good for the community. Now let me just so people understand, they're not just rerouting the pike for the heck of it. The curved segment that exists today, which is above the slightly curved segment you see in the slide you're looking at now, is a viaduct that needs to come down. It's run its useful life, and so they need to replace that. So instead of just replacing it in place, they're going to move it over, and that makes for a much better construction project. You can keep the viaduct running until the new road is ready, and then just kind of swap over Meanwhile, you're going to try to create this neighborhood in there and make that a human scale neighborhood and create some new bike and pet connections. And really exciting, you see that from a river standpoint, that green bar line along the river is new parkland. I mean, that is one of the worst little segments of riverland that exists right now. It's only a few feet from the river to the Starrow Drive there, so you ride along and it's not exactly a romantic spot.
Yeah, let me just move one image forward. That's kind of what some architects envisioned that space to be like.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea, what those,
will be.
That's looking from the Cambridge side over at this thing, and what you can see this clump of buildings, no one knows what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
But the idea is to create a set of streets that would accommodate a decent neighborhood, as opposed to, and this is important, a set of freeway ramps. So they've tried to make an urban interchange that is compact, doesn't take up a lot of space, and allows a lot of room for development. And what you also see behind there is, at the back of that, is a possible T station, and that's something that we're very much hoping to do as well.
Commuter rail.
Commuter rail station that would potentially provide rapid urban rail service at some point in the future.
I want to go back to this image, because there's another very important thing that was discussed at great length last night. On the right-hand bottom side is what they call the throat area. That's where there's this viaduct that needs to be replaced, and then the Soldiers Field Road, and there are discussions whether that could be done all at grade, so it may be easier to connect to BU and to Brookline, or is the viaduct going to be replaced? And the advocates, that was their meeting last night, really want Mass DOT to explore an at-grade version, which I think is very interesting.
Well, I agree. I think the at-grade version is extremely interesting. I think it saves some money, and it is good for the whole streetscape. It's a very tight squeeze in there, and I think MassDOT is working with them closely to see if it's actually possible to get the routes through there. And there are people who believe it is.
Yeah.
But the question is whether they've really thought about all the problems that get created when you do that. So I certainly hope that we can get to an at-grade solution, because it's much preferable in many ways.
Yeah. So this might be a new project for some viewers. So I just wanted to let you know that this show, as well as other shows about the Charles River Conservancy in the Parklands, are on YouTube. And I actually did do a show especially on I-90 with Harry Madison, who is very involved on the task force. And so if these images go by too slow, you can then find them and slow them down on YouTube.
Good.
But I wanted to move on to another project that is in your district that is also complicated, but maybe not as complicated as the I-90, but it's the Bowker Overpass. Do you want to tell our viewers what the issues are there and how you've been involved with that?
Well, sure. I mean, I think most people don't know what the word Bowker Overpass means. Bowker Overpass is the overpass that connects Starrow Drive over to Fenway. So if you are going down Starrow Drive from the east or the west and you want to get over to Fenway, you're going to go over the Bowker Overpass, and people may not really even realize that they're going over something, but in fact they're going over Commonwealth Avenue and Beacon Street. This is kind of funny. The first place I lived when I was a child, when I was a baby actually, in late 50s, 1957 was the year I was born. My parents lived on Fenway, and they remember how bad it was, how bad the traffic was there before they created the Bowker Overpass. It was a nightmare with people trying to get over from Starrow across Com Ave, across Beacon Street over to Starrow. So it's an awful thing on the other hand, this overpass, because it is an overpass that basically runs over the muddy river. It doesn't just cross
a park also, the park on
Charles Gate Park.
Yeah.
If you go back to days before the automobile took over, that spot there, as you can see, we're looking at kind of the junction between a river, that's the muddy river, headed down to the Charles. So that was it's called Charles Gate, and there was a pump house there and a regulator.
It's still there.
There is exactly.
Yeah,
I don't believe it's functional in any way at this point, but it is still there. Beautiful old pump house and a gate. But it's just, it was a gorgeous intersection of rivers. That's one of the most special things that you can have in nature, is two rivers coming together. And it was man-made. It was part of the Emerald Necklace in the sense of they had some lovely stone walls and things, and which are still there, but they're underneath this overpass, which basically runs right along over the last few hundred feet on the Muddy River, and hides that real gem of the Charles Gate Park from everybody. There's that whole sort of tangle of ramps right at Starro, and then there's the overpass itself over much of the Muddy River. So a lot of people wanted to take that down. The question of that it did need major maintenance. Going back a few years, it was clear that it needed major maintenance because it was basically falling apart, and they were spending a lot of time on up there fixing things. So there was the people said, well, please don't fix it, take it down. And naturally, I understand the motivation to that, and we really pushed MassDOT to really study the possibility of could it be taken down and some alternative built. And there were people, and there are still people who believe that's what we should have done. But I have to confess that I was convinced that by MassDOT's analysis that unlike some overpasses that were really not necessary, like the one down by Forest Hills there, this one really is necessary in order to continue to get traffic in and out of the Longwood Medical Area and Fenway and so forth. So unfortunately, they made a decision, for better or for, I believe it was the right decision, it's just unfortunate we had to make it, was to keep that overpass. And so they repaired it, they've substantially repaired it. But now the question is, given that it's going to be for a while, how can we really make the park underneath and around it as nice as possible? And
there's a whole movement in the country to take down, obviously, we took down the overpass where the Greenway now is.
Yeah.
And so taking down overpasses is almost like removing dams from rivers. That's a national movement.
Yeah, I get it. And we would have loved to see it happen, but this one's different. This one just connects some really major traffic flows. There's about 58,000 cars that go over the overpass every day.
Yeah.
And if you ran those through those neighborhoods, nobody would get any place, unfortunately.
There is a small improvement coming there. At the top of the circle, there's a little green space to the right. And so there's going to be now at least a pedestrian and bicycle connection from the Emerald Necklace and the Muddy River going through that green space up to Mass Avenue, and that's a project by the Solomon Foundation, and Mass DOT is funding that. So that's
right. So that's moving forward. That's exciting, and that starts at Beacon Street, right? So it doesn't really connect all the way over to the Muddy River, unfortunately. So it just starts at Beacon Street and connects over to Mass Ave. That will be very cool. That's another one of those things that you have to kind of walk around there to visualize it. But believe it or not, there is a very nice green space kind of hidden there between the two east and westbound sides of Starro, and it's actually accessible by foot.
Yeah.
You would think you couldn't get there, but you can because of the way all the ramps are tangled in there.
So I understand this is funded and is planned by Mass DOT, so that's
yes, the money is in place for that. But then the other part of the question is, what do you do with the rest of the space underneath? And there's been a very active and frankly upset group of neighbors upset about what's happening in that space. But I think it's becoming a vibrant new entity, which is going to be called the Charles Gate Alliance.
Good.
And we're going to work with that group has come together, and I expect them to assemble the resources, which DCR just hasn't been able to do, the resources and the focus to develop a plan for that space under there, which may in fact help create that ultimate bicycle connectivity that you were mentioning through to the Muddy River, or it may be some other use. It could be a dog park. There are a lot of ideas coming forward.
We were actually approached. They asked us could we build a skate park there, and because there are many parks or former parks where there's now a freeway on top, and what to do with all those. And I just saw a magazine that had 10 examples of what's being done under overpasses and freeways, So using lights, there's all kind of methods to enliven the space. So I hope they will find the right solution there.
I think they will. I think they will. So I think there's a lot of energy behind that right now, and I'm excited about it.
Good. Well, let's move to another project that you have been involved with and supported, and that's the Greenough Boulevard.
Yes. No, so that's a wonderful project, you know, and that's not something that I can really take too much credit for. I really want to mention Herbst Nolan and the Solomon Foundation because they kind of identified this opportunity and basically sold it to everybody, and I was glad to be one of those people to whom it was sold and to support it. But really, they deserve credit for initiating it. The Greenough Boulevard, for as long as I can remember in my life, it was just one of these roads that had too much capacity on it. It was a 4-lane road with very little traffic. Lots of kids, and I can remember doing this when I was 17 years old, would go out and drive too fast on it because it had some nice curves and there was nobody there.
It's very wide and no traffic, absolutely.
Yeah. So what they've done is they put it on a road diet and they've taken it down to 2 lanes, and that's created a wonderful new, great improvement in the bike path along there, which I think everybody's going to enjoy.
This was a rendering that was done by Herb Nolan. He's a landscape architect. But it's now implemented. The trees,
it's done.
The trees have survived the planting, and we hope they'll survive the winter. And it looks wonderful. I think it's going to be inaugurated soon. It's a really improved environment. And the DCR deserves a lot of credit for that. And the Cambridge Plant and Garden Club and other donors, the Mount Auburn Club. There were a lot of people who contributed, so that was a great project, and thank you for your help on that.
Yeah, as I say, I really am just almost a beneficiary of this. It's such a special improvement, and it's much better biking, and it's walking, and it's a great space for everybody.
So in case you didn't know what it was before the road came all the way to the bike path, and in some places there was no barrier, and the bike path was very rough.
Yep.
And now there's a real buffer between the bike path and the road.
Yep.
And there's so little traffic that it was perfectly possible to do. So that was really a great project, and it ended up in a wonderful way. So let's move to another project, a little bit further upriver in Watertown.
Yes. No, well, that's another one where the Solomon Foundation's been wonderful, and also Perkins, and also, by the way, Simmons College has contributed funds to that as part of the deal on Daly Field, which is on the other side of the river there.
So Perkins, to help you locate it, Perkins is on the right-hand side in the picture at the bottom.
Yep.
And a little bit further to the left, going upriver, would be Watertown Square.
Right. So the stretch of parkland going east, going downriver towards the Science Museum from Watertown Square had not been improved in a long time. Very rough sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. So they've replaced the walkways in there, and they've also created this very special Braille Trail and some lovely artwork and tactile artwork that people can enjoy in that space. So I really commend that place. People can drive to that or bike to it. It's just a very, very lovely space.
Yeah, the day I was there was a school class there. I mean, obviously it's also intended for visually impaired people, but it's just an absolutely wonderful place that invites for exploration and games. And I think here's another picture of the lookout.
Yep. No, it's a very nice space that people should definitely seek to enjoy.
Yeah. So these are kind of some of the projects that we thought you might want to talk about, but there might be, tell me how you use the river. Do you use the river mostly for biking? Is that how you mostly enjoy it? Well,
honestly, yeah. I mean, I commute in from Belmont to the State House most of the time by bike, and I do that usually, biking to either Watertown Square, more commonly to Harvard Square, and getting on the river there. And so I'm a daily user of those intersections that we were talking about earlier, and making sure that things actually happen there is a high priority, and looking at traffic safety more generally is a high priority. I mean, we're talking about river projects, but there's also rules of the road issues. So we have a great bill that's coming up this year on which we've titled an act to reduce traffic fatalities. Mm-hmm. And that bill includes the hands-free cell phone issue that we did before.
I mean, for the cars.
For the cars. But that's an important issue for cyclists and pedestrians. You'd like cars to be seeing cyclists and pedestrians. And the ability of municipalities to use cameras for red light enforcement and speeding enforcement. That's a big issue because we only have so many finite police resources. We can't put police everywhere. So I think that kind of enforcement could help people be more law-abiding on the road. It also addresses some safety education issues, some safety practices for cyclists, some rules of the road issues for cyclists, and that I think it's part of that whole Vision Zero movement, which is something, of course, that's important at the intersections on the river, but it's important on all the streets and intersections of our urban areas. So I think among the folks that represent the urban areas that have Somerville, Cambridge, Boston, there's a lot of interest in this legislation. I'm really hopeful that we'll get it moving this year.
Great. Well, I have your contact information in case people want to contact you, have any issues, and I want to thank you for coming to CCTV and talk about the Charles River, and thank you for all you do along the Charles River.
Thank you for having me, and if I could just mention my website, which is another thing for people to be aware of, which is willbrownsberger.com, and a lot of information about all these issues on that. Wonderful,
and I know you are active tweeter and you're
not too active on Twitter, but heavy blog, light tweet.
Yeah, and you also write for the papers. So thank you for all you do.